Cacti and many other succulent plants are fascinating. They're beautiful, they're strange, they're unusual, and we grow them not just for their wonderful flowers and blooms, but also for the incredible diversity of their shapes and forms, the different colors of the spines, the textures, and the shapes and sizes. In today's video, I'd like to share with you some of the most bizarre looking, some of the strangest, some of the most unusual, yet beautiful and really ornamental cacti and other succulents that I grow in my collection. The truly weird and wonderful. Hi everyone, my name is Joe. Welcome back. Welcome back to my channel, a channel for all fans and enthusiasts of cacti and other succulent plants, irrespective of whether you're a novice and beginner or an experienced grower and die-hard cactus and succulent plant nerd. In any case, this is the channel for you. As I just mentioned, in today's video, we're actually looking at the truly weird and wonderful, really strange and unusual, but very ornamental plants in my succulent and cactus collection. Now, even beyond the normal cacti that are already beautiful, unusual, strange, quite unique, there are particularly crazy, weird and wonderful plants that occur in the family of Cactaceae, in the family of the cacti. And it's amazing because there's hardly another family of plants in the kingdom of plants that could compete with the strangeness, the unique bizarreness of some of the plants that we find in this family of Cactaceae. And the plants I'm talking about, of course, are the so-called crested, or also the monstrose forms of cacti, among which we also find strangely spiraled and twisted forms. So, relatively rarely occurring, even stranger plants than the already quite unusual normal cacti and other succulents. And so, what I'd like to show you are some of those examples in this group of the truly weird and wonderful from my own collection, how best to cultivate and to grow them, but also let me briefly explain to you why these plants actually look the way they do. Basically, crested and monstrose forms of cacti are the result of an abnormal development of these plants and of mutations of certain important types of cells in the plant. Crested cacti actually look a little bit like corals, or like a coiling snake, or even like a human brain, while monstrose forms of cacti are often spiraled forms, they're twisted forms, or they're lumpy forms, and they just simply look highly unusual. How then does cresting or monstrose growth develop in a cactus? Plants, like animals, have different types of cells and tissue that is responsible for different tasks in helping a plant successfully grow. The so-called meristem tissue of a plant is actually a tissue consisting of immature cells. These can develop to different organs, if you like, different parts of a plant. They can develop into roots, they can develop into stems, they can develop into leaves, and they're basically a bit comparable to stem cells in animals. A very special type of meristem tissue, a very unique and important type of meristem tissue, is the so-called apical meristem tissue. And that, as the name says, is located at the apex. That's usually the top of a plant, but also at the very tip, for example, of the roots of a plant. So the apical meristem tissue located in the central growth axis at the top normally of a cactus in the middle, and also located at the tip of roots. This apical meristem tissue, the apical meristem, is basically responsible for the primary growth of the plant, or the cactus in our case. It makes it grow to the normal and mature shape and height of the plant. So it makes it grow towards the light in order to then conduct photosynthesis. And it is responsible for achieving that form, if you like, of a cactus that is typical for that type of cactus, be it a globular type, a columnar type, etc. But as I said, there's also meristem tissue at the tip of roots, and there it's responsible for the growth of the roots to make them longer, to make them develop a network that in the soil, in the substrate, is successfully finding moisture, water, and nutrients. Now, while a plant, or a cactus in our case, is growing normally, occasionally, rarely, it can also happen, it can occur that something goes wrong, and a genetic defect in this apical meristem tissue can occur. So basically, a genetic malfunctioning in the central growth axis, that small growth point at the apex of a cactus. And so suddenly it can deviate from its normal form, from its normal growth. And so that apical meristem tissue that was a single point, a growth axis, suddenly starts to grow sideways into a line of points. So basically it becomes a broad line of growth points developing, forming along that line. And so as a result, the cactus starts to take on a more unusual form, a crested form. It becomes more contorted, it becomes distorted, and that crest, as it continues to grow, can become ever more curled, contorted, folded. And so as a result, we actually then have a crested or a cristate form of a cactus. This process of cresting, by the way, is not just found in cacti and plants in cultivation, but it's a naturally occurring process. So it actually also occurs, again, rarely, but often enough to actually notice in plants in the wild, plants in their natural habitats, when these start changing their shapes from the normal morphology to a crested shape. You might have seen pictures of these crested cacti, sometimes very large cacti in the wild. There's fantastic examples of saguaros and gruzonis, Echinocactus gruzoni, the golden barrel cactus. These are among many, many other species, cacti that can actually suddenly move from being a normal to a crested type of form. Oh, and by the way, crested cacti in their scientific names will take on the addition cristata or cristatus. When it comes to monstrose cactus forms, so not crested, but the monstrose forms, we are again dealing with a mutational, a genetic defect of this important apical meristem tissue. And in this case, that single growth point of a normal cactus actually genetically modifies itself not into a line, like with the crested cacti, but it actually starts to occur in a pretty random distribution anywhere on the plant. So those growth points start to randomly appear on different parts of the plant's body. So we no longer have a symmetrical development of growth, but in this case now we have a lumpy, a knobby, asymmetrical development of growth and shape of the cactus. And there's a few actually quite well-known cacti around that are wonderful examples of this monstrose type of growth. Among the monstrose forms, we find not only the bumpy, knobby type of forms, but also some really bizarre shapes like corkscrew spiraling and sometimes also ribs that have no or very few spines, or spines that have a very different shape to the normal shape that that cactus would actually have. Interestingly, these defects, these genetic defects that result in either the crested or the monstrose shapes of cacti are not actually genetically inherited. So typically, if you collect seeds of a crested cactus and you sow these seeds, you will not necessarily get more crested cacti. So if one collects seeds from flowers that developed on a crested cactus and we sow these, then the seedlings from this crested cactus, for example, will not necessarily actually, in fact, also very rarely generate plants that are crested. The vast majority, if not all, the seedlings coming out of the seeds of a crested cactus will actually be perfectly normal growth seedlings. So very often we find that crested or monstrose cacti will actually need to be propagated through physical propagation, if you like. So there'll be pieces that are grafted, or they will be clones that are rooted. So what can trigger this genetic malfunctioning of the meristem tissue? These defects usually occur spontaneously as cells divide and the plant grows. And they can be the result of injuries or disease or infections, and equally of sudden shock-like changes in the environment. So cresting and monstrose growth can occur equally with seedlings, with very young plants, but also with actually quite old established plants, like I say, as we sometimes see in nature, where there are suddenly these huge saguaros or other large cacti, equally with small ones, of course, but these cacti that are well established that suddenly have a crest developing at the upper part, at the top of the plant. What's also really interesting actually is that sometimes, for whatever reason, again, a cactus that has been growing in a crested way, so with that apical meristem tissue growing, along a line, it can suddenly decide that at some point the plant starts to grow normally again. And so out of a crested cactus, we occasionally actually have growth that changes into the normal form of the cactus again. A few words on how to actually cultivate these cacti. Generally, they can actually be grown in very similar conditions to normal cacti. However, quite a number of these cacti, because they are living with these genetic malfunctions, they are also slightly more sensitive to their environment. And so generally, they should actually be watered even more carefully than a normal cactus. With respect to their location, again, very bright locations are fine. But as I say, they can be slightly more sensitive to overwatering, so they do need some slightly more special attention than, if you like, the regular forms of these cacti. which is also why very often crested cacti are actually found grafted on graft stock, so they don't actually have to grow on their own roots. But if you provide these cacti with that extra bit of TLC, tender loving care, you will be rewarded with some of the most amazing and bizarre shapes and ornamental plants that we can find in the kingdom of plants. So with that background in mind, let me show you a couple of examples now of these crested or monstrosely shaped cacti from my own collection. A really popular and well-known example of a columnar cactus that grows in a monstrose form is, of course, the totem pole cactus, also known with its scientific name of Lophocereus or Pachycereus schotti, and it's the forma monstrosa, of course. It has very irregular, knotty sort of ribs and spineless areoles. Again, it's a genetic mutation, originally actually from southern Arizona, the Baja and Sonora in Mexico, but is now very commonly found in cultivation and in many gardens and collections worldwide. Another wonderful cactus in this category is Eulichnia castanea, and it's the cultivar varispiralis, or form spirali. It's a highly sought-after cactus by collectors simply because of the rarity and the unique special appearance. In nature, these cacti can become huge. They're very large, up to 7 meters in height, and they grow in many coastal desert areas. By the way, there's also a dedicated playlist on my channel that actually has quite a few more examples, short videos and videos of the type of plants that we've covered in this video today. So in that playlist, you'll find hopefully more examples, more inspiration if you're also fascinated by these crested and monstrose type of cacti. Hopefully you found the topic interesting and you found the video both interesting and useful. Equally, I hope you agree with me that some of these plants are just amazingly beautiful and amazing ornamental plants. If you did like the video, then please give me a like, and if you'd like to actually hear and see more about cacti, like I said at the beginning, whether you're a novice, a beginner, or whether you're a very experienced cactus grower, it doesn't really matter. In this channel, the whole spectrum of experience is covered. And so if you'd like to regularly be informed of the new material, the new videos and topics that are uploaded to this channel, then please do subscribe if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel. And I would really recommend that as you're subscribing, you also not just click the subscribe button, but next to it, the bell icon, because that actually is ensuring that you get automatic notifications when new material, new topics are uploaded to the channel. Brilliant. Thanks so much for watching today. Hopefully see you very soon again. Until then, take care and of course, happy growing.